And we're on the putting segment, right? So I'm going to bring in one of my sponsors of the podcast, which is Back to Basics Putting Mirrors. ProPath Putting Mirror. Link is below for your discount code. Cam Smith uses it. It's designed by Grant Field and good friend of yours, Mr. Richard Woodhouse, right? Who I think sits on the board of does he sit on the what's he sit on?
It's the advisory board. He's a phenomenal man, that one. Yeah, very smart guy.
Very smart guy. Very smart guy. Can lift a weight or two, right? But Back to Basics Putting Mirrors. Everyone knows, listen to the podcast. I'm a big fan of it. Always have been. Used them before they were sponsors. Years and years ago, reached out, paid full retail. So no freebies there, right? But I want to talk to you about, in this putting segment, right, about an exercise in regards to what can a player be doing in their testing, for their short game putting, or can you give me a 5-ball test or some form of test that we can be using here on the putting green?
You just want me to give you some tests that we do for the players? Absolutely, sure. So I'll give you 4 that we do. So we look at putting. Nice and simple in theory, right? We want to be able to have the speed of the green at an appropriate level. So we want to be able to control speed. We want to be able to start the ball on the intended line with the sufficient break that's required to make the ball go in the hole, right? Nice and simple.
Yeah.
What are some of the drills that we can do to ensure that we've got each of those 3 things there? So what we do is, at the beginning of the round, we will get a player to do one thing. One, we don't get them to putt to a hole, and the putts are over 30 feet. We just get them putting. They're not putting to anything, just putt.
Tell me why. Why do we not putt to a hole?
Because the ball doesn't need to go into a hole, and if it goes into the hole, we don't necessarily know the speed that it's gone into. So we want a player just to be able to start getting used to the conditions. There's no success measure at this stage. It's just, okay, this is the speed of the green. So you're just putting around. There's no freedom. There's no stress.
So not even to a tee or a mark on the green, just...
You can if you want to. We just like players just putting around for a bit. Then from there,
sounds trivial, doesn't it? When you think about it, right?
Yeah,
it does.
But so then from there, what we'd do, it's essentially a warm up.
Yep.
And then what we're doing is we're then bringing in what we'd call a ladder drill. So the ladder drill is it is roughly 30 feet. So we'd have one tee here, another tee kind of here. Let's pretend this is like 30 feet. And we'd have another tee kind of here, which is maybe 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah.
Then we would have the player putting from here, and it's a ladder drill, so they might have 5 balls depending on how good they are. They can have 4, 5, up to 10 balls. Then from there, they'll putt the first ball. It has to go past the first tee, but not past the last tee.
Yeah.
Then the next ball has to go past the last ball, but not past the last tee, and so on and so forth. So they've got to get all the balls within there. That's a nice...
Jeez, that's tight. That's very tight.
Yeah. You can flex it as much as you want.
Yeah.
So you can either shorten the distance, reduce the tees, or increase the length of the last 2 tees. So there's flexibility in movement depending on who you're working with. I'm talking about working with some tour players.
Can you tell me the benefit of why going past that ball each time?
Yeah, so it allows them to have speed control.
Okay.
So they need to just make it just past, right? So we want it just past, so they can start working in increments. It's quite challenging because then we flip it and then they go downhill, uphill, across lines.
I love that. It allows them to have speed control. Like, I've never actually thought about it in that term. I've used like training speed control, but do you have speed control? That's what you're organising here in the pre-round warm-up. Great. All right, there's 2.
Absolutely. So the next one we do is we start the player off. It's about 1.5 feet.
Yep.
Right, so we put a tee in the ground. It's about 1.5 feet away, and I have 5 tees that kind of sit in the ground. They're about a ball away, right? So they're a ball width away. The player essentially will stand up. It is a flat putt, okay? So there's no break on this. What we essentially do is the player would set up on the first tee. They've got a ball. I'm standing behind the 5 tees. I'm putting a finger on whichever hole I want them to aim for, right? They're setting up. They're looking at the tee I'm aiming at.
Okay.
Right, with my finger. They have to putt the ball without looking at the ball and looking at the tee, and the ball has to hit the tee.
Okay.
They'll then do it again. I'll put the tee there. Then what I'll do is I will start moving my tee. I'll moving which tee I'm going to, and so they could be standing there looking at a tee I'm aiming at. I could then move it as they're just about to stroke. So then they have to move the putter face. Remember, they're not allowed to look at the ball.
Mm.
Then they have to address themselves again, and then they have to putt. What this does, this aligns what they're seeing with start line. So they can start building in the fact that they know they don't even need to look at the ball.
Mm.
When they're aiming there, they know the face is aligned because they've been able to hit the tee. So they've become, I don't know if you work with a lot of, I mean, you work with a lot of players,
Yep.
right? But they spend so much time looking at the ball. They
Oh,
spend
yeah.
so much time
Yeah.
doing practice swings. So we want to get them as external as
Yeah.
possible. So most players are kind of 90% of the ball and 10% target. We want to flip that
Yeah,
around.
you just got to use the throwing a ball analogy in cricket. We talk about cricket. Like I use cricket all the time.
Yep.
Like you don't stare at your arm when you're trying to throw the ball at the stumps.
If you watch Ronnie, watch that KPMG that she won. You watch those last couple of putts. Watch her when she's that putt on 18. She goes through a process. She set it up, and she's just looking at it all the time. We implemented that a week before.
Shit.
She's phenomenal, man. Like she goes, yes, I understand this. I agree.
Oh,
Bang,
Wolf.
gone, done.
She's very
She's
adaptable.
incredible.
She's gone in 18 months for what she's done. But you know, people listening to this podcast talk about it every time. Cam Smith stares at the hole longer than anyone.
Yep.
Must be doing something, right? All right, so I'm very interested to kind of hear, right? So this back to basics putting segment's been my most learning one so far. You're really teaching me. Can you tell me what studies did you come up with in regards to this really alternative exercise around moving the target? Because it just seems to be so. You can understand how this sounds a little wacky, right, Craig? Like I agree with you. Right? I know you're the man with the data. Right? I know that you collect. I want you to tell me a little bit more. How did you get to this conclusion that I'm going to move this target around?
Oh, with the tees. It wasn't me. I learned from a very smart guy called his name's Dr. Craig Farnsworth.
Yes, well, he's got a good name, right, Craig? Right.
He's an eye optometrist, specializes in putting. He worked with Annika Suraston, Brad Faxon, Nick Faldo. Like the guy's a guru. I learned that from him, and so he took me through a lot of stuff that how the eyes were engaging and what you could do. I then start adding. We just do the tee, and you look at the tee. I started moving it more for the players because what we found was it made the players so confident that I could do that. I could disrupt and move them, and they can still have face control.
Interesting.
So when they went into putt, they knew that wherever they were looking, regardless of what happened, they were able to start the ball on that line. So then it starts moving into speed control, and it starts moving into ability to read greens. And then from there, what we do is once the players have done that, we do a 3T drill. So the player would literally go through full routine with us. And the player goes, we might start the ball off. I chuck a ball down to like 12 feet. A little bit of movement. The player then puts the ball down with their, like the apex, start line, and where the ball is going to fall into the hole.
Yep.
So they have to predetermine where they're doing, and it creates commitment to a putt. It creates focus, and it also is extremely helpful to understand if they're underreading or overreading the greens, and if they can start the ball online. Also, we're with caddies quite a bit, so the caddies can actually see the tendency of the player really quickly.
I've done some studies around this too, though, Craig, and I recently had a putting coach on, Denny Cowell, who works at the Pete Cowan Golf Academy.
Awesome.
And this is a great strategy you've got. But I've also, done some studies and read some studies in regards to this doesn't suit every player, though, the tee drill. Not trying to question you by all means, but the apex, because there's lots of studies out there that show that even good players have got no idea. Because of where the apex of the putt is, they're just feeling it, which is kind of comes back to the situation that you spoke about, the being reactive, right? Like kind of just reacting with moving the tee around.
Yeah, I think so. So I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to shorten the time it takes to learn. So the problem we were trying to solve with Ronnie as an example, she would underread a lot of the putts.
Okay. Yeah.
So we work to explain like start line, apex, to get her aware of it. And what we found was by her understanding it, she's a very smart person.
Yeah.
And remember, she's very young. So I think, especially with a lot of these older players, they're like trial and error, right? They're going to feel it. Feel, in my view, is a lot of it's just the brain subconsciously accessing like history.
Yeah.
So you learn, it's all the learnings that you've done in a particular skill. That's really where a feel comes
Yeah.
in. Sometimes players might not have that feel, or it would take them too long. So we're trying to bypass, and they're taking them 9 months or 10 months to learn it.
Yeah.
We found it just speeds it up. Will she keep doing it forever? Probably not.
Yeah.
Is it right for everyone? Absolutely not. And I think that's the beauty of this game.
Yeah.
Everyone is so different, and you can try half a dozen drills, one will click. And at the end of the day, I mentioned to you there, fail fast. What we're looking for is we're looking for integration of activity.
Yeah.
Understanding when it's executed on the golf course, does it have any impact in score? It's pretty binary, yes or
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
If it doesn't work out, what do we do? Let's iterate, let's refine, and let's work together. And you'll be amazed. Like, you get to it pretty quick.
Mm.
And then you've got this total efficient plan, because there's no BS with it. There's no stuff that you think is in there because someone told you they think it should have. You're in the understanding of why every single activity you're doing, why it's in there, and how it will help you achieve your best.
I love that.
It's quite
Well, that brings us to the end of the Back to Basics putting segment, Craig. And that was the most I've learned in regards to a putting segment. I'll be honest with you that. So, that's the Pro Path putting mirror there. It's got an arc on top of the putter, Craig, which I'm sure you most likely got one, right? It's got the arc on top of the putter, which is at 15 degrees, which I love. I love. No putting mirror has it. Now, 15 degrees, they've got that because it's halfway between what we see on when it was measured on PGA Tour average, I think it was, or elite level, which was between 18 and 12, and they chose 15. Discount code is below. I think you're crazy to not have a putting mirror. I think it's every single player in the world is using one. Helps with your alignment, helps you get calibrated, and I guess as well helps you find the truth and earn some trust is what we're spoken about today. So that's the Back to Basics putting segment there.